Howdy folks, in this video we're taking a look at SIDs and their function in IFR flight planning. A SID is a standard instrument departure, and the function of it is to get you from the airport to the rest of your flight plan in an efficient and predetermined manner. So here I have up the ENORD-4 RNAV departure for Tofan Bridge International Airport. RNAV stands for Area Navigation. We'll cover that more in future courses. And this FLE here is just an abbreviation for FlightLine. Across the top, you can see some pertinent information about the airport. We have the departure frequency, the airport elevation in feet, and the transition altitude. The transition altitude is where you stop calling your altitude in feet and start calling it in flight levels. So you would say 8,000 feet, 9,000 feet, flight level 100, drop the last two zeros, rather than 10,000 feet. This SID is active for runways 09 left and 09 right. So once you get the ATIS, as we did in our last video, you can say, okay, runways 09 left and 09 right are active. I'll file the ENORD-4 departure. If it was runways 27 right and 27 left, you would not be able to file this departure because it's not for those runways. The first thing you'll notice on the actual chart here is an orange circle extending around the airport at a radius of 10 kilometers, and it's labeled Tofan VOR. VOR stands for Very High Frequency Omnidirectional Range, which is a fancy way of saying radio navigation. And we don't simulate this in FlightLine at the minute, but in real life, what you could do is tune this frequency, 112.6, and using your VOR receiver, you could see what your position is in relation to the airport. So between a radial of 020 and 080, we have this 2,400 number, and that is the minimum safe altitude, or MSA, which is the minimum altitude that gives you 1,000 feet of clearance over any obstacles. For the rest of this section, it's 1,700. You can also see over here the Connervie Regional Airport. This symbol just indicates another airport, and that's JC04. You'll also see similar numbers in each of these boxes in gray, and that's the off-route obstacle clearance altitude, which is a similar figure, but for this entire box, it gives you 1,000 feet of clearance. Note that the MSA is a little bit more sensitive and localized, and so it may be higher than the OROCA in some cases. In any case, let's say you take off on runway 9 left. How do I actually fly this SID? Well, I'm going to start with a heading of 088 direct to ENORD. At ENORD, I need to be at no more than 210 knots, and I need to be at 2,500 feet. These blue bars indicate at or below, at or above. And if you have both of them, of course, you have to be at exactly that altitude. Then we're going to fly to our transition waypoint. The transition waypoint is where you leave the SID and continue on to the rest of your flight plan. The rest of your waypoints or airways or whatever you have filed. So for the sake of argument here, let's say we have Wessel. I would fly a track from ENORD of 171 degrees to Wessel. You can see here we have ENORD-4 dot Wessel, and that indicates we're flying the ENORD-4 departure Wessel transition. And we have a couple of numbers on this leg here. We have 1,000. That is the minimum en route altitude. So very similar to the MSA and OROCA, that's the minimum altitude that gives you requisite clearance and also ensures that you're going to be able to pick up navigational signals. 14 is just the distance between these two waypoints in kilometers. That's pretty much all there is to reading a SID. We'll do a more involved example here, at Delarue. So here we have the Runda 1 RNAV departure for runways 36 left and right, 07 and 33. And let's say we depart runway 33, which is this one. We're going to fly a heading of 328 to Uxton, turn right to 099 over to Runda. And then if we want to fly the One transition, we'll go 163 to One. Remember, again, the transition waypoint will be the last waypoint on the SID that you're flying. And we can also see the same directions reproduced in this little box down here. So we took off runway 33, climbing left, turn 328, then turn right, 099. We also have a blanket restriction to be at a maximum of 250 knots below flight level 100, which is again 10,000 feet, unless otherwise authorized. And side note, 250 knots below flight level 100 is a universal rule, doesn't only apply to SIDs. Those are the basics of reading SIDs in FlightLine. In the next video, we'll cover stars. If you have any questions, feel free to contact an instructor. And as always, stay safe.